it's very clear that brands like yours are the lifeblood of esports today, right? And I say this in no uncertain terms. Esports would not exist without the support of brands like yours. Help me understand what influences your decision to look at a particular market, whether or not it's esports ready or esports investment ready, and then as a next leg to that, what influences your decision to invest in that market?
Thanks, Nishant. And to Northern Gaming Crafting, thank you for organizing this. It's quite something to pull off an event like this, bringing the public and private sector together. And with you, I'd love to have a storytelling conversation because marketers always strive to be better storytellers. I'm still striving. Nishant, just to clarify a question, are you talking about market guiding investment in a market in particular or in an e-sport, let's say a title or a league in particular, or both?
I think the market, a broader view on the market, whether that is in esports leagues, tournaments, publishers, teams.
Geographically speaking.
Geographically, yes.
Okay. So, look, let me just dial back and like Akshat, I'll do a little bit of context setting first. So, for MasterCard, our strategy when it comes to any kind of sponsorship or partnership is a passion-based strategy. Coming from MasterCard, people find that surprising sometimes. They expect something more intelligent sounding, and I just say passion-based strategy. Because ultimately we want to be where people are. And as Akshat was alluding to earlier, we are a very experienced, we believe in an experience-based economy, not an advertising-based economy. So that's point number one. Now when it came to esports, and I'll give the example of what we did in 2017-18, we became the first global sponsors after much deliberation, but we were clear about one thing. Consumers were going where esport was, they were gaming, and we wanted to be where they were. And basis that, we decided to do a multi-year global deal. So it was not a specific market that we went into. However, when it comes to activation and when it comes to local investments, I think it's the typical objective numbers and goals that you look at, right? You're talking about saturation, penetration. And for financial brands, of course, you're also talking about the ability to productize and drive commercial benefit out of what you're doing. So there are three fundamental factors, let's say. Interestingly, they all begin with P. One is popularity. So, the title and the popularity of the sport in that particular market, in that particular region. The second is purpose, and I know purpose gets thrown around a lot by marketers. I do not believe in lofty purpose. I think even just doing your function well is purpose lived well enough. But when I talk purpose in the context of esport, and going back to our partnership with League of Legends, what we liked was that their vision and our vision was very clear. It was a community building approach. What we said to them was, if you're going to tell me that I will have 721,000 touch points to put my MasterCard brand, I don't need that. Our awareness is 89-90% high. We even dropped our brand name from our logo. It's a symbol-only logo, happened 6 years ago. But what are we going to do to grow the community? And that's a conversation that we're having.
Just to play the game, and that's it. No one knows who you are, you're playing the video game, you'll get your prize money, and that's the end of it. But that's not how fandoms and industries are built. My question to you, having run a successful gaming and esports PR agency, how crucial is strategic marketing and branding in driving revenue growth and eventually profitability for all esports stakeholders?
I think we are at that stage in the industry right now where superficial metrics like impressions and viewership are less relevant now, and then we need to move to a point where we're actually delivering ROI to anybody that's investing, whether it is B2C revenue that we're getting directly from the end users or it is brands that are investing. I think strategic marketing is at a point where it's important for us to design campaigns and stories and PR narrative where the users are actually getting value out of what they're investing their time, money, effort in. So that's the crux of it. Is how I see it. We really want to start telling stories that are engaging. We want to start getting users to start paying us and be able to deliver ROI against that. And I think strategic marketing is going to be the core of how we deliver this value to anybody that's investing or is participating in the industry today.
Thank you, sir. Rajaram-ji, the first time I asked you the question, you mentioned that it's on the industry to build those stories, right? But as someone that's holding the pen most of the time, Are there any actionable tips that you can provide to help esports effectively leverage storytelling to build itself up as an industry?
Thank you, Nishant. Before I answer your question, I think it's very important that the publishers all come together on a common platform and make it easy for the government to recognize esport. At the moment, esport is functioning without government recognition. And if you're looking at it as competitive, wanting to represent India, use the name India when you're playing outside of India, then you need government support. Then you need government recognition. I think it's high time that all the different players come together, maybe have a meeting, a round table, and decide how they're going to go forward. Yes, each game has got its own publisher and they own everything. It's a bit like cricket, as we were discussing just now. It's a bit like cricket, where the laws of the game are owned by MCC, and the ICC only puts up playing conditions for the World Championship. And IPL has its own set of playing conditions, but the laws of the game are owned by a private club. So we have a similar situation, but I think it's high time that all the gaming institutions, esports institutions, I won't call them gaming, I think it's very important also to start creating this perception that esport is, while all gaming may be esport, all esport is not gambling. I think it's very important to create this perception in the minds of the government, in the minds of policymakers. If the industry can come together, and at the moment it seems scattered, if it all can come together on one platform and convince the government that we are in it together and we will help generate massive revenues for the government, which it can use to promote Olympic sport. I think it can be a beautiful relationship with the government and with Olympic sport, and there is money in this game, and it can help India move forward. When this happens, and this narrative spread in the government and among the Indian Olympic Association and everywhere else, there will be only positive. I think it's also very important for us to understand that when you want to tell stories, it's about emotional connect. People are very interested in knowing how much money an auto rickshaw driver's son who used to earn 30 rupees is now getting a 3 crore contract in IPL. People are interested in that. But stories are essentially about what you feel in your heart. When someone wins, you want to share the joy of their victory. And when someone loses, you want to feel the pain that they feel. And this, if you can start coaching the player into sharing their emotions with the world, and they must find a way of doing it. They can do it. Today, we are becoming more and more irrelevant journalists because athletes have got their own direct access to fans. There was a time where people like me were the only storytellers. Today, Ashwin has got his own YouTube channel, and Irfan Pathan has set up his own YouTube channel. Virat Kohli can reach out to his fans through his Instagram page, right? This is what esports players need to do. They need to start telling their stories of human emotion, and that is what our sport is about. It's about winning, losing, it's about learning to cope with defeat and picking yourself up the next day and then going out and playing again. And if we can encourage esports players to start telling these stories of their own battles inside, and particularly because it is mental, if they can share everything, you don't have to share your great secrets, but share your pains, share your joy. I think the world will be a much better place.
Very well said, and I'm entirely in agreement with that. Feelings and human emotions are truly sector agnostic, whether it's big business deals or accomplishments in sports. Sharing feelings tends to amplify that message and eventually helps the industry itself grow quite significantly, I would say. Kavil, let me come back to you regarding the brand perspective of things. As MasterCard, you made quite a few headline-making moves in the esports world, right? Whether that is your partnership with Riot Games or the G2 Esports Academy that you've worked on with them. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience has been like and what lessons can be applied from established initiatives in markets like this that can then be applied to a burgeoning scene like India.
Yeah, sure. I do think a lot of it has been discussed, so I'll take this in two parts and I'll touch upon the learnings and what can be applied to India. But I also want to just share an example. You may not give me time after this to share, but I want to talk about what financial brands, and I won't talk about MasterCard, what financial brands are doing to really break the mold. So from a learning standpoint, wherever we've seen success with e-sport, it's really back to those basics like I mentioned. There is strong commercialization that brands can do because there is an audience, and if there isn't an audience, there is a willingness, of the audience, even if they may be a little bit less experienced or less out there, to absorb and to take away, to absorb and to be able to give back, right, to the investments that are being made. The tournaments that we see, and I think having myself gone to a lot of League of Legends World Championship and mid-season invitations, the question and the provocation I'd have, for the good stakeholders of India, and I continue to be one even though I don't live here, is what would it take for us to do something like that here in India, right? Because back to the point around legitimacy, adding credence, that is what. It's not just the certifications and the coaching, those are very essential ingredients. But the moment you have tournaments like those happening in the country, I've seen what it does to the economy of the country. It's not just the Olympics, it's also these tournaments, right? And what it does to elevating the positioning of a particular sport. But the point I want to just share here, Nishant, is on how e-sport is being leveraged for financial inclusion. And that is not something that the world is really talking about, and I'm surprised. And actually, there's hardly any innovation happening here in Asia. So I'll give you two examples. One is, very quickly, one is Bank Colombia. 23 million, I'm going to use the word gamers a little bit interchangeably because let's just for a moment not just talk about competitive sport, but we're talking about gaming at large, right? Not gambling. Your point is very valid, Raja. So 23 million gamers or people who love to game in Colombia. All of them need digital payments to be able to access in-game currency, assets, etc. All of them were outside of the credit card ecosystem. Why? Because there's no payment industry. The payment industry means you will not be issued credit cards, so they kept getting rejected. What did Bank Colombia do? They decided they were going to create a new credit scoring system. How? By gauging these people basis 28 soft skills, gaming skills, cognitive flexibility, team collaboration, working under pressure, overall cognition, how to manage money in times of crisis, reflexes, etc. Basis that, they issued credit cards to these people, to this audience. So go back to profits, imagine what that has done. And by the way, as I was reading the case study, I was like, surely it bombed by the end of it. These people have not paid, there's been bad debt. No. Actually, they're hardly revolving any credit, which by the way is bad news for a bank. Banks make a lot of money when credit is revolved. So that's another story for another time. But they're all paying on time. Why? Because these gamers or these game-loving enthusiasts are so grateful to the bank for saying.
Follow established esports team right now, but I think rest Abhishek to.
I think these are the only. So Karan rightly mentioned. So an esports athlete doesn't only play games. To play games, he has to train his brain and the mind, right? Because while playing a game, it is 80% brain and 20% skills that are used by these hands. I think rest everything is covered by Karan.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you a little about, so the question was whether there are some similar academy programs running in India. We've been running an academy program for 5 years already. As part of this program, we scout for talent in the country. We provide them with a stipend, we give them equipment, we give them everything they need to go through in the country, right? And we, in addition to providing them with everything they need to be an esports professional, we also provide them with peripheral skill development services, like for example, giving them training on how to be a good PR person, how to speak on camera, how to be able to engage with an audience. We also give them master classes with sports psychologists, tell them how to build their mental fortitude, how to present themselves in a tough competitive environment. And we've been running this program for 5 years in collaboration with eenthusiast. And now we're at a position where we want to scale this up to an international level, be able to service more esports titles. So yes, there are academy programs running, but they're a little unknown because esports is still niche to a certain extent. We're trying to take it mainstream. But yeah, so we have a couple of such programs running in India right now.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, this is Aranshi from India Today Gaming. So I have a three-part question for Karan sir. Sir, we've met before at BGIS 2024. We talked about the grassroots program. Then we heard about the Rising Star program. So my question to you is, how is first the grassroots program going? How is second the Rising Star program going on? And is there any way that we can see Krafton collaborating with schools to identify child prodigies for say 2023 Olympics, Esports Olympics, and at the same time, is there a way that we can train them to tell their stories like Radharaman sir said?
Okay, so on the grassroots program, it's for tournaments like BGIS to help these new individuals or the new talents that come. In the top 32 teams right now in the ongoing tournament, we have been able to support 3 of them, not naming them, because it's not too cool to get support, is what these kids say. With regards to Rising Star, we will be announcing the 10 selected individuals during the BGIS Grand Finals, and you'll hear more about it. Lastly, the third question, I think this conference by itself is an initiation from Krafton's end, along with our the governments, the PEPIs, Invest India is here. So this is a step towards the future, wherein we work alongside with the government to make it sustainable and of course find a new star. Like Akshat said, right, we are talking about today's kid, 14-year-old playing the Olympics. So I think the process has already been initiated by Krafton, and hopefully we will have a lot more stars in 2023.
Final question was, is there something that we can do to bring out these stories? Like, for instance, if anybody can help you,
I think after this I'm going to sit with sir and we'll create something for the upcoming BGIS in April itself, and then a couple of stories for sure.
I can tell you a trivia. When I was starting out as a young journalist, sir's workshop was the first workshop that I took ever. So,
Then it's your job to tell the story.
I will, but if only we could talk.
Call. Hey, we had another question at the back. Would you like to?
My question is open to the panel. A lot of the comments were very individualistic, specifically talking about athletes, not really talking about the largest esports industry. I'm glad that Kaveri is on the panel. She spoke about MasterCard's partnership with Riot. Which everyone knows that Riot's esports department works completely separate from the game department. It's an experience on its own. So my question is, what can India do, or what can we do to really elevate the experience of esports in this country and turn this into a commercial product on its own? There is so much dependency on influencers and the so-called numbers that need to be met for the brands to even get sponsorship. We don't really have a full-fledged commercial product on its own. So what efforts can we do to actually make that?
Thank you. I can start. The job really needs to be done by us, right? And again, this is a great forum to be having the conversation. I think that's a really good provocation. So let me start by saying, if I were to make an open invitation to people out here, and I've had conversations, sidebar discussions with Nishant, with Akshat, and a few other people here to say, I've asked the same question, right? I have an Asia Pacific lens. I'm looking at some very hot markets, as far as esports is concerned, in Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, etc. But my question is, we've been talking about India becoming a gaming superpower. I think someone made a very good point. For some reason, when it comes to sport in India, and I'm not blaming anyone in particular at all, the gap between good to great, and I don't even think it applies only to sport, I'm damn honest, it applies to a lot of things, right? That finesse, that perfection, वहाँ पर हम we fall down a little bit. So I'm saying, what is it, the way innovation is happening? And those are also the learnings we ourselves are taking away and saying, why is it not happening over here? So two things, financial inclusion and financial literacy. How to invest money, how to grow money, right? Incentivize people as they do it. Do the gamification you need to do, which I know is different from gaming. But there's a lot going on in the world that we can bring to India, that we can bring to Asia, and and have fun with it.
That was outstanding. I have to say. Sorry, go ahead.
Outstanding because she told us a story. Examples resonate beautifully. You can sit here for 2 hours and keep listening to Gyan, but one story I think has impacted each one of us. What Colombia did. I don't think anybody in this room is ever going to forget this one. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. And to the rest of you, take notes. Right. So I think very well said. There's this element of bringing the parameters that go into making a good game and then applying them to areas like financial inclusion. And I'm sure there are many more applications like these that we're just not even thinking about right now. So truly a spark for innovation over there. Karan, you're the esports guy, right? You've been building the esports ecosystem for crafting and for BGMI for a while now. Talk to us about how tournaments and training programs help in building a structured esports ecosystem for the country.
So just before we go there, let's just say at Darwin, I know there are a lot of issues, right? There are a lot of things that is not happening in Asia or Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia, actually, a lot of things are happening there. But in Asia, it's not happening. But at Darwin, we've actually started initiation, something called as Rising Star. Stories for individuals, not the entire bunch, but maybe 10 people for the startup. And we would be giving them PR support, letting the stories out, educating them as to how to grow, financially managing them, looking into their contracts, having our legal counsels look into what they are basically supposed to do, which document they sign, which they do not. I think as publishers, we've been trying to expand and move as fast as possible, but it takes time. There are different stakeholders that we have. There are players, there are teams, there are orgs. We do not want to offend anyone while we do this. We want to be on the right side, but at the same time do the right thing. So it takes a little longer. Now, when you talk about programs for players, of course it helps. Guys like coming in, educating someone who's fairly new. So you basically scout a player. This might be, let's just say, the recent player that Rajasthan picked up, 13 years old. He might be a great talent, that's why the scouting team got him in. With esports, it could be a rickshawala doing it, or a cab guy who just dropped me here saying that, "Aap Karan se do." I'm like, "Oh, okay, G." He's like, "I'm a big fan. I have qualified for this level of one of our tournaments," and I was like, "Hey, dude, hats off." He asked for a selfie. I had some merch. I gave it to him, and I felt so proud that anyone and everyone, thanks to mobile gaming, can get into the limelight. Let's assume this individual who's now running the camp, of course, there are financial restrictions that he might have had, that he's working and playing together. If there is a training program that comes into place, of course, it helps them grow. When you look at financial support or financial aid, while being a part of this program, that aid is being taken care of. So the stress in your house, I think that's similar to traditional as well as esports. It's the same between both. So let's assume I had a major injury when I was in my prime for traditional sports. If I had the financial aid, maybe today I would be playing for India. You never know, right? So a structured environment is always good. But at the same time, overexposure at a very early stage could lead to loss of good talent or great talent. They might be the greatest, but overexposure might also lead to them getting this chip on the shoulder, which would say that, hey, I am the best and nobody can beat me. So you just want to stay away from that, but also get a point that yes, you are good. So I think a great coach, like Sir here, would be able to create such individuals, and I think correctly said that we should support the coaches. Maybe create some great coaches. There are in the recent times, there have been few players who just retired. They might not want to come back as a coach, but with the insights and the strengths that they have, we would be able to support the ecosystem. Just one last point, like storytelling, being a part of it. Everybody wants to tell a story, But these new individuals, thanks to the social media days, whatnot, I think the trolling has to go away. The trolling is where they do not want to come in front. While they might be fearing the cameras, the kid inside there, right, who enjoys playing this game. Like today we see a Virat Kohli as a Virat Kohli, but there is a kid inside him when he goes to the pitch and he bats. That kid inside you can never go out. So maybe we as storytellers or people who are able to share this better should do it in a way where the end individual or the player is also comfortable, so that we can grow this way.
Thank you, Karan. And I think when everything you were saying kind of forms an image of a person in my mind, and that person is Naman Mortal Mathur. I feel like he's the quintessential person who went pro in PGMI and then utilized that to build himself up as this mentor slash athlete who then retired and continues to be a well-wisher of the scene. And I think he's got storytelling down to science.
So, matter of fact, Naman was one of those 500 viewers watching him, and me and a colleague of mine back then had watched him online. We got him on the main school, but then the support of that also helped him become what it is. So, publisher finding the raw talent, and maybe somebody like a Thug or a Situal or Norman creating and curating this person and making them who they are. So that's what I meant.
Precisely. The ecosystem coming together is a good story, and hopefully it pays us back. Abhishek, I wanted to talk to you since this is a government-oriented panel. I wanted to talk to you about what do you think governments can do to support, or what kind of policy support can you expect or hope for in order to build more Naman Mortal Mathurs in the country?
See, Nishan, again, I'm not the right guy to comment on what government should do, but what I have seen in the past few years is that government is doing enough. I think recognizing esports as a multi-sport event, it creates truly and a great narrative. If there is no substance, but talking out loud and making my father understand that it is being recognized by government, it makes more sense. Because like I am into this business since last 5 years, and still my dad, he cannot explain to his friends. And I think there are probably so many outcomes of that. I can't talk it in the public domain, but again the thing is, my dad still don't know what I do. Right? For him, it is like he's doing something and making money. Right? Coming out of a typical Bania family, he still considers that if you sell something, you make money. Right? And for him, I'm not selling anything. I'm just sitting in front of the laptop and doing something. Right? I think policymakers will do. But what I would like to highlight over here is that last year, Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, he interacted with some young bunch of individuals who are doing something in gaming. For me, they are big names, but still for most of the India, they are some individuals who are doing gaming. Right? If not a lot, but these frequent interactions with the government bodies and government ministers and our community, if I talk about esports, gaming, whatsoever, right? If there are some public meetings and public interactions, I think itna bhi agar ho jayega, I think we will do a lot of things. For me, I don't want any policy to be made right now. This is my thought. I can be wrong, but if there is an interaction that's happening between the government and young individuals, and my parents somehow understand the business that I do, I think that's it.
So what I'm hearing from you is the true influences are the ministers of the country who can actually bring legitimacy to the
Yeah, I just told you I'm a Bania. Whatever business I do, I will publicize it. Right? I will promote it.
Fair enough. Alright, Siddharth, let's. True. Honestly, he says he's being very honest about this. True. Alright, Siddharth, let's change the tone of this conversation a little bit, right? Let's talk about educational institutions, and let me ask you a simple question. Do you think educational institutions can significantly accelerate esports growth in India? And what would a good partnership in this space look like?
Right. I think absolutely. One of the things that there's a couple of things I can imagine educational institutes being able to contribute to the ecosystem. I think for this context, for this conversation, it's important to look at esports as not just pro players. Right? Educational institutes can actually build curriculums and design campaigns around the supporting functions of an esports industry, right? Whether it is broadcasting, or it is design, or it is so many other things that go into making a successful ecosystem, right? I think that's something, when we talk about esports, we're usually referring to pro gamers, but and we lose sight of the support functions, which I think can really be elevated with educational institutes taking up that task. So that's one thing. And the second thing also is, I think there was some conversation in one of the earlier panels about building infrastructure for the esports industry. I think educational institutes can really contribute to that aspect of the growth as well, right? The third thing that I can imagine them doing is bringing a lot of legitimacy. If, for example, when I was in my school or in my college, if I didn't have to hide and play games, on the contrary, it was encouraged by my college or my school, I think that would have really accelerated how we as an industry are growing, right? So I think there is a lot that can be done. There's a lot of raw talent in our country, and I think educational institutes can really bring structured development around the whole thing. So I think these are a couple of things that come to mind.
Yeah, I can fully, relate with the hiding and playing games aspect of it, right? And I think most of today's people that are working behind the scenes in the industry can. But very powerful point there, right? A lot of the conversation around esports tends to focus on the players that are in front of the spotlight. But to get those players there, you have various types of stakeholders and companies, and each of those has an army of people working within them. All of this is opportunities for job creation and skill development for various states across India. So, very valid point there. I think what I'd like to do here is open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and feel free to ask. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Neha Mukesh, Assistant Professor. So I just want to know the players, esports players, what type of training, fitness or psychological preparation they need. And do we have any dedicated academy where they can go and practice, government academy or something? And if not, so is government doing something over that?
Your question is superb because we've been having this conversation all throughout the day offline as well. Would either of you like to answer this?
Thank you for a wonderful question. Now, with regards to training facilities, yes, there are a few. Our man here, Abhishek, has been training fresh talent, making them who they are. But with regards to government facilities, the state governments have just been involved. And these small supports that are being given to these esports athletes have just begun. It was not there in the past. During our time, of course, it was not seen at all. But that is comparatively gone up. Now, with regards to the training that they receive, they actually receive equal, not equal, but about 50% of the training that the traditional sportsmen get. While our current sportsmen relax, take a break, playing gaming, not competitive but just game. Our esports athletes actually take up traditional sports like cricket, football. They actually are there in the smaller version of the game because the new concept have come up. They have to go to the gyms, they have to work out. Yoga is a part of their schedule. At the beginning, of course, it's difficult, but listening to the stories of a few established players, the ones at the bottom have started having a correct life.